gherkin pickles.
Gherkin pickles.
Oh, dear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to Guys Fishing Weekly. We don't just fish, we hug.
Hey, buddy.
Eddie.
How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Guess what
Yeah?
today is?
What is today?
Our 50th episode.
Dodge. Who do we got on the show for our 50th episode?
Before we do that,
Today's episode is sponsored by Trout Routes. Winter trout fishing can be a challenge, but it's also one of the most rewarding seasons to be on the water. To make the most of it, you need the right tools, and that's where Trout Routes Pro comes in. With satellite imagery and detailed maps of over 50,000 trout streams, you can scout winter-friendly spots like deep pools, tailwaters, and areas that stay ice-free. Planning your trip is easier than ever with over 350,000 access points mapped, plus custom markers that let you track your favorite winter runs or places to warm up. You can even check stream flows and water temperatures to ensure you're fishing in the most productive conditions. Winter fishing is about precision and preparation. Let Trout Routes Pro be your guide to finding the perfect stretch of water this season. Podcast listeners can save 20% on their first year of Trout Route Pros by using code WEEKEND2025 at maps.troutroutes.com. That's 20% off your first year of Trout Routes Pro by using code WEEKEND2025 at maps.troutroutes.com.
today on the show, we have Karin Miller of Zen Tenkara fly fishing gear.
Greatest conversation, dude. We had such a good time with her. We could easily have her back on to talk for like a whole nother 2 hours.
Probably 2 more episodes. It was a good one.
Yeah.
On the show, we talk about fishing firsts, what is Tenkara, fish management and ethical fishing practices, and the importance of failing and progress.
Let's do it, brother.
Hey, Karin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, it's good to see you. Good to see you. We met you at the fly fishing show in Denver, and I just got to tell you that, like, we had a pretty long conversation. You were willing to, like, give up a half hour of your busy time to talk with us, and so it was awesome learning all about you and your stuff and Zen Tenkara. It was incredible. So I just got to say kudos to you for giving regular Joe Schmoes like us a chance and giving us some conversation in your time. That was awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. But that's what the fly fishing shows are for, right? Engaging. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Well, we do our research around here and always try and dig in on who we are talking to. And I came across a story that I thought was kind of one of the coolest fishing origin stories ever, which is your fishing trip with your dad and the special catch that you got on that day.
Yeah. My Matchbox cement truck. It's in my shelf.
That's awesome.
I thought that was kind of like a joke. I didn't even know if that was real. I was like, wait, is that serious? Yeah. Tell us about that.
It was. And to this day, I will never know. My father has since passed, but he never admitted to whether he planted that Matchbox truck on the end of the line or whether somehow I truly believe I really like caught it from the bottom of the ocean. So I don't know,
That's awesome.
but
Who knew? Your first catch was a Matchbox cement truck, and it led you to running a company in the fishing world. That's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing.
like I said, I'll never forget just kind of being out there on the dinghy with him, in this little boat, and we were just putzing around over this reef and fishing. And, I think I had said earlier, fishing was never really a focus of for him, as far as a hobby. It was just occasionally. And this was one of those occasions where we were just kind of messing around and, hey, I think you've got something on your line. And I was just like, what? And I hold it in. And there was this Matchbox red and yellow cement truck. And, I had said we were on a very small boat, 27-foot Morgan sailboat for longer than any young kids probably could, 27 feet running back and forth.
Right.
But we weren't allowed toys, it was like a box of cards. We played Old Maid, Go Fish, that kind of thing.
Old Maid.
Old
Wow.
Maid.
We played that.
Go Fish, stuff like that, and entertained ourselves by, the water and screwing around wherever we anchored. And, I had said running feral on beaches and just messing around. But, it was like, oh my gosh, this Matchbox truck, it was a toy. And, for the rest of the trip, I just laid there and like all over the deck, it went everywhere with me. And, I think I have several pictures of me just randomly being wherever, like on islands or walking a beach, and I had this truck with me. It just was always in my hand, and like to this day, I still have it,
Awesome.
and it was
That's
just
awesome.
magic of that time.
Right.
Well, we've talked to a lot of people that have always said, when you have kids on a boat, they got to catch something, otherwise they're not going to have any interest. So your dad's a smart man. He knew that you had to catch something.
Didn't have to be a fish.
No,
That's right.
apparently not.
Right.
Yeah, a toy truck worked just as well.
And look at how special it was to you. Linus had his blanket. You got your toy truck.
I did. The only toy truck. It's not like I went down the rabbit hole and started collecting Matchboxes.
Right. No, you got yours. That's good.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's about the time, right? It's about those special moments, whether, it's a parent or whether you take a friend out or a buddy, or just even if you're acting as a mentor to somebody, just share that moment of, catching the fish. I was recently in Australia, and before the show started, I told you one of the resort owners happened to be there on the property, and we got to talking, and he said he'd never fly fished before and was always curious, and would I give him a lesson? And so the next morning I met him on the beach at, I don't know, it was 7 or 7:00 in the morning, and we spent about an hour casting, and he was doing really, really well, and we were about to end and finish up, and I said, well, I've seen some rises and some things like some nervous water. I'm like, let's walk out and just cast. And literally, like the first cast, like real cast into the open water, he hooked into a beautiful queenfish.
Nice.
And he
That's
was
awesome.
just thrilled. I mean, for the rest of the trip, every time I saw him, he was like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now he was like, give me recommendations. What should I do? So he's a lost soul when it comes to fly fishing now. He's hooked.
You got him hooked.
Yeah.
Nice. Good moment. Good moment. So you grew up, your dad wasn't much of a fisherman. So how was it that you came into fishing? Give us a little bit about you and how that kind of came into your life.
Well, I moved to Colorado in 99, and, coming from South Florida into a landlocked state was a little bit of a shock. For
Adjustment period there, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for a number of reasons. And I loved being outdoors. I'm always drawn to water and the outdoors, and was doing a lot of hiking and things like that, and just trying to figure out, how to feed that in Colorado versus, on a beach,
Right.
or the ocean. And I, at the time, I met my now ex-husband in Colorado, and he was new to fly fishing. He was self-taught, but he was introducing me to fly fishing. So I was introduced by my now ex-husband, and it was not. I didn't love it. It was one of those marital agreements where he would do a yoga class with me if I would go fly fishing with
Right.
him. Uh, and as much as I loved being out there and on the river, I didn't go frequently enough to really ever get good at it, or feel like I was competent, um, which then led me to not want to go because then he was always assisting me, which then cut into his fishing time. And then I felt guilty, like, oh, if I go, you're not going to get to fish. You're just going to be, helping me
That's
untangle.
how Reed is with me. He, he's like, we can't
let
go
the
that often.
conflict
We can go
begin.
occasionally, but not that often.
So who's the river caddy for who?
Yeah, right. No, the problem with us now is, Ed being 20 years my younger, I can't even keep up. I get all the backwash water. You know what I mean? Like he just bombs up the river, and so he goes and catches all the fish in the holes, and so I'm just like trailing up because I can't get ahead of him ever. And if I do happen to, it's only for like 10 minutes, and then he bombs past me. So, yeah, the youth piece is really playing a role.
You drag your feet in the water too much, make it all muddy. So I got to get ahead of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, it's having fishing buddies is great. It's amazing to do that.
It is. And, back then, certainly there weren't all of these women fishing clubs and things like that, So, if you pretty much, if you didn't grow up learning it from, your dad or your grandfather, certainly as a female, it was then going to be from, a boyfriend or a husband or something like that. There just wasn't those.
So then how did you get into doing it on your own eventually?
It was through the introduction of Tenkara.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I wanted, I'm very type A. Anything I do, I want to do good at it. Right.
Mastery.
Mastery. Just as somebody who was working full time, who is a full time mom, wife, running house, kind of all of those things. You only have so much leisure time, right? And you want that leisure time to be relaxing and rewarding, right? And you kind of get on the river, and I was undoing knots and not remembering how to do things. And I was just like, this is not relaxing. This is stressful. Like, why am I doing this? But back like in 2009, I got my hands on a Tenkara rod. I got introduced to that method, and it was sort of like this, like, whoa, why didn't anybody why am I doing this when I could, or that when I could be doing this, like, why didn't somebody show me this before? And it had just come to the States and been introduced. And that was, I kind of didn't want to go back to the rod and reel. I would sit there with a regular fly rod, and he would stand next to me and say, that was a fish. That was a fish. And I'd be like, huh? I didn't feel anything, but on a Tenkara rod, it was like, ooh, that was a fish. I didn't set the hook, but at least I could feel it, And so that was sort of how I started to go down that path.
So when
Enjoy it more.
describe Tenkara, or define Tenkara, I guess what makes Tenkara Tenkara? Is it just the rod that makes Tenkara? Because you've kind of labeled it with like one type of fly, one type of knot. Is there a whole setup that is the definition of Tenkara? Or is it just the rod?
Well, that could create a lot of debate.
Oh, okay.
So there are people out there that believe that Tenkara is fishing with a Tenkara rod, which is a collapsible ultralight rod that doesn't have guides and there is no reel. And you're fishing a short line setup in high mountain streams in fast moving water for small fish, mainly trout.
Right.
And that is Tenkara. Other people will say that's too defined. Tenkara is anything I do with a ultralight collapsible telescoping rod with a fixed amount of line, no guides and no reel. So some people will argue it's the tool that you're using. It's Tenkara if you're using a Tenkara rod, regardless of how you're using it in the setup. Other people will argue that Tenkara is not just about the rod you're using, but the entire setup and methodology and how you're fishing it, how you're using that tool.
Nice.
So,
Now it's steeped in the Japanese culture.
yes.
How does that play a role in your Tenkara fishing? Because I noticed like your logo is like kind of like the yin and yang. And here's kind of what I'm getting at. If you think about the idea of Tenkara being a fixed line method, right, of fishing, kind of, that's how people look at it, for small fish, you have changed that and pushed that boundary quite a bit with what you do. And so there's almost like that yin and yang of thinking, like if it's this fixed line method, wait a minute, there's so much more we can do with a Tenkara rod. And so does the Japanese culture and thinking in way of that, how does that play a role in all of that? I guess that's like a really involved question.
Well, I think I think that my foundation of Tenkara was very traditional. That's where I started, in that very fishing it, with a furled line and a very short setup and reverse hackle flies. Um, and that's where I fell in love with fly fishing, with Tenkara fishing. I think whenever you progress in something, it's natural to want to see what else you can do with it, where else you can go, what are the boundaries. And so I think that was a natural progression out of my own growth from the method. I will say that from from the history of Tenkara, the Japanese history, Tenkara goes back hundreds and hundreds of years to commercial anglers up in the high mountains of Japan. They were subsistence anglers, right? They were essentially poor fishermen who were trying to put food on the table for their family, and then also fish and use that as commerce and trade for other to fill other needs and to obtain other needs. They were not doing it. They weren't fishing a certain method or a certain way because it was artistic or because there was some cultural piece to it. that defined that this is the way it had to be done. They were doing it because it was effective. And to me, that's really the core of what true Tenkara is. It's, minimalistic equipment, that when used in a very thoughtful way becomes very effective.
Nice.
And so, even down to kabaris, there was this myth in America that Tenkara anglers only use one fly, it's only this one magical fly that works. And it's true that Tenkara anglers historically did not use a lot of fly patterns. And it is true that Tenkara anglers would generally focus on a fly that worked. But we do that today, right? I mean, if I go up the Pooter, canyon, I'm bringing in elk hair caddis, not because it is the only fly I can use, but because it's proven itself effective for this water. And so if
Ed brings the stimmy. Yeah, and it might change the color, but it's pretty much like stimmies in his box.
I'm a one-fly fisherman, yeah.
Yeah, right. You use what works. Right? If I'm going up to Rocky Mountain, I'm bringing a yellow Sally. I mean, it's just, it's no different. Different regions in Japan had different patterns, not only because different things worked, but because they also had access to slightly different natural materials, right? They just had, that was their resource. And so I think we created a lot of mysticism around that, which, when Tenkara was first coming to the States, added to its mystique and uniqueness. But I think if you took a Tenkara angler out of Japan 500 years ago and you plopped him on, the North Platte or, the Blue or the St. Vrain or whatever, the driftless, he'd have a Tenkara rod in his hand, but he'd assess his environment, assess the fish, and then he'd adapt and figure out what needed to be done. That didn't mean he was no longer a Tenkara angler.
Right.
He was figuring out, he was solving the puzzle with what he had to work with, using a fixed line rod, a long collapsible rod, and making it work for whatever environment he was in. That's my definition of Tenkara.
Nice.
I like that.
I think that, definitely. I think there's this idea that, progression brings, deeper thought, all those kinds of things, whatever, as we get through. But there's this idea that why do we got to muck stuff up so much, right? This simplistic, effective way of doing things. Oh, wait, no, we could have thousands of flies. We could have 50 fly boxes in our pack. We could have, all these things, right? And I think that story of yours is fantastic, that it was actually the simplicity and the effectiveness of the style of fishing that Tenkara brings that helped you kind of in that gateway into the sport, right? And like you say, you don't only fish Tenkara now, and so, but that was actually the kind of the simplicity and the ease of it, which maybe you're onto something there with this idea that maybe that's the gateway for a lot of other people who feel frustrated when they go, because you're absolutely right. If you don't go do it, right? If you only sporadically do it, it's going to be frustrating, for with untying knots and getting snags and all that kind of stuff. So it does take a commitment to that. And I think that that's a really cool thing, that you found a love of something through something that's more simplistic and easy to do, right? I mean, and incredibly effective. And I think that it gets maybe a bad rap that way, in the fly fishing world.
A lot of anglers, fly anglers, people in the industry I find it very curiously it almost, I get a sense they're almost threatened by the simplicity of it, feeling like it somehow takes something away from conventional fly fishing. And I argue just the opposite. Um, I would not be fishing in Australia or Patagonia or Honduras or chasing permit or bonefish or going to Alaska, to fish rainbows or salmon. None of that would have happened for me had I never been exposed to Tenkara. I am certain, knowing myself, I would have stepped away from fly fishing. And, it just makes me wonder how many people have had a similar experience where, they buy a setup, they go out, maybe they take a class or a lesson, they get on the river, they spend an hour driving to a location, another half an hour setting up, 20 minutes getting to the river. The first two casts, they get hooked in a tree. They break off their fly. They get frustrated. They tie on another one. They stand there for, an hour. They don't hook into anything, or at least nothing that they are aware of. And then they go home saying,
Well, that
why am
wasn't
I
that
doing
much fun,
this?
right? Right.
I've never heard that story. That's a fake story. You've made this up just to pitch your wares, and I don't believe it.
I don't believe it. It's never happened.
Never happened to me.
I've seen him do that. Yeah.
Whoa. Calling me out.
It just piecemeals it out, I think, in a way that is much more user-friendly and allows people to, I think, this is a perfect example. It's like, would you rather have a surgeon operate on you with latex gloves or a pair of mittens? And I kind of, make that analogy because I stood in the water for a year and a half, you know, never recognizing, that a fish was on my dropper, like I just didn't even know it. And when a fly would, when a fish would actually come up and take my dry, my reflexes were so slow that it was like, oh, wow. And it was like the fish came, the fish went. And then I was amazed and like, wow, I got caught up looking at, and then finally it was like, oh yeah, coop. And by then the whole experience was over. I say, like, in order to get good at a hook set, it really boils down to quick motor reflexes, right? A motoric response. And in order to get that honed in, you have to practice it because it's a muscle reaction. It's a reflex. And in order to practice it, you actually have to have the opportunity to even try to set the hook. And if you're not recognizing there's an opportunity, then you're never even making attempts to do it, which means you don't get the opportunity to practice and you're never going to hone that skill in. Tenkara just increases that opportunity.
Nice. Right.
One of my biggest level ups in fly fishing was actually minimizing the amount of equipment I carried with me every time out. Still on a lighter 3-weight rod is pretty much what I fish all the time, but I went down to just a tiny chest pack, one fly box, and it was almost a game changer in the sense of like I didn't have all of the choices and extra thought on hand with me. It was in the car or at home, and I think it kind of forces you either into working with what you have, getting creative, being stuck to learn with what you brought with you. And I think was one of my biggest level up was just that downsizing and equipment in general. And I think Tenkara, that would be the next step here, which I'm excited for, will be another leveling into just, being kind of stuck with what you got and figure it out in a way. So that was kind of a big aha moment for me.
The problem solving piece is to me where so much of the learning and the growth takes place. You know, even when I think about chasing some of these traditionally Tenkara species, doing some of the saltwater things or just the salmon and larger, more powerful species, I always kind of go into it like this might be the biggest failure of all time. But maybe it'll work, let's see. And you walk in and it's sort of like sizing things up. Like, okay, what do I know about this species? What do I know about the fish? Based on observations, what do I know about this scenario? And like what is likely to happen, right? How will I respond to that? What is the end goal? Do I have an end goal? What am I trying for? And sort of, what are the things that I have to really be aware of that could interfere with the success of this? And how will I deal with it? And kind of running through that in your mind, you kind of cover bases, but there's always something, right? That that is the unknown. There's always
right.
that X factor of like, okay, I didn't plan for this. But when all is said and done, I'm always really reflective about the whole experience. It's like, okay, if this worked, why did it work? Was it a fluke? Did I get lucky? Do I really think I can repeat it? Can I do it again with the same level of success? And like I said, why was it successful? And just opposite, if it didn't work, you know, it, why didn't it work? Was it something that where the equipment just failed and it was beyond the capacity of the equipment? Was there something I could have done or changed or done differently? Did I respond different? Should I have responded differently? You know, and as I said, I think you take a lot away from the successes, but even more so from the failures.
Right. Right.
And I love that. I love that part of fishing Tenkara because it helps me to be a better angler on the rod and reel. You learn a lot about fish management when you don't have a reel or extra line, right?
Right.
And I don't, I'm not into ripping lips and beating up fish or any of those things. It's
Right.
about doing it
Right.
in a healthful, safe way. And we go to expos, we go to seminars, we go to fishing clubs, and the focus is always on fly casting and fly tying. That's what people come to hear about. Very rarely do we talk about fish management, and what to do once you've
Mhm.
actually set the hook. And it's a critical part, I think, that is really lacking in the fly fishing community to have conversations about that because, there's such a big focus on fish mortality and keep them wet and keep them in the net and, the grip and grin pictures, they shouldn't be out of the water and all of those things. But nobody's talking about, how many times should a fish be running? How
Right.
quickly do you bring them in? How do you do that without damaging them? What, what is good fish management?
Right.
Because to me, that contributes to fish mortality even greater than the grip and grim photo
Right.
that, a lot of the fly fishing community, frowns upon now, or certainly is reminds us all we should be doing it in a safe way.
In a different way. Yeah. No, that's a great point about, how you properly play a fish. And you're right. We never see stuff about that, like content wise, there's no instructional videos. There's no, mention or talk of it. I think it is an important factor in keeping fish alive. Um, how did you, I guess you talked a little bit about, the progress of the process of progress and how that kind of feeds you as a fisherman and you get better by doing those things. What was it that made you decide to use a Tenkara rod to go after bonefish, permit, tarpon, whatever? Like, you've caught some massive fish on a Tenkara rod, which again breaks that kind of traditional mold. And I think, in the fly fishing world, I think you're 100% right. I think that people feel threatened by some Tenkara fishing. The fly fishing world can be brutal. It can be intimidating for people wanting to get involved. But what was it that made you go from starting on this small river, traditional Tenkara fishing for small fish, to want to go catch a bonefish on a Tenkara rod? Tell us about that. Maybe that first experience that you had, because that to me is like pioneering stuff. I love that. That's amazing. Tell me what's going through Karin's brain to say, you know what, I'm going to bust out my Tenkara and try to hook one of these big giant fish.
Honestly, I had no idea what I was doing, but
yeah, right.
I had never saltwater fly fished before in my life. I was set that for precedent first. So I literally had no idea what I was getting into.
Right.
But I had gone down to Denver and had this was the beginning of Zen fly fishing gear, and was trying to get a fly shop in Denver to carry Zen Tenkara rods. And I walked into the fly shop and the owner happened to be there, and I introduced myself and I started to talk to him about Tenkara. And I will not mention names or shops, but it has since rolled over to different ownership.
What does it rhyme with? I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Oh, no.
But I literally got pushed out of the fly shop. The gentleman started poking me in the shoulder, backing me up out the door, and said, "It's people like you that are going to be the death of this industry." And then he said, "Go catch a bonefish on that thing and come back and talk to me." And I was like,
right on.
Okay. Out the shop, rubbing my shoulder.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not really
Game
sure.
on.
Bonefish. I know there's some.
Right. Right.
I've never done it, but I think I'm going to go do that. And that is what I did. I shortly thereafter, like, Googled guides in the Florida Keys and called this guy up and said, I want to fly fish for bonefish. And he was like, "Sure, no problem." We booked just a day. I think I was just booking a day. Like I said, I was still new to fly fishing. Certainly had little experience, well, no experience in saltwater fly fishing and zero experience on a bone. And so, called up friends, flew into Miami, said, "Hey, can I borrow your car?" Driving down to the Florida Keys. I got to fish with this
Nice.
guy. And head down there. And on the way down, it was getting late. And I didn't know, like, I've been fishing with my traditional, furled and tapered Tenkara, lines, which are
Right.
like 11 feet long. So I stopped into this fly shop on the way down to Florida Keys, and they were getting ready to close, and I was kind of like the last customer in there waiting for everybody to leave. And then I walked up to the guy at the counter and I said, "Do you know what Tenkara is?" And I was amazed because back then, most people had
Right.
no
Hadn't heard.
idea what it was, even people who were, deep into fly fishing. But this guy actually said, "Yeah, isn't it for fishing like trout in the mountains or something? It's like these small
Right.
collapsible rods." And I had my Kyojin rod, which is a big, hefty Tenkara rod, and I had it kind of behind my back, and I said, "I said car rod," and I opened it up, and he, kind of just stood there and watched as I extended it on his counter, and he was like, "Whoa, that's bigger than I expected." And I was like, "Well, this isn't a normal Tenkara rod." I said, "But here's the deal. I am trying to catch bonefish tomorrow morning on this, and I have never fished for a bonefish in
Right.
my life before. And I need you to help me build a line." And to this day, like, I owe so much to that guy that he didn't just, like, laugh his butt off and throw
Or
me out.
poke you in the forehead and out of your shop, right?
What are you thinking, right? But he actually, like, did. And he had a bunch of, like, old fly line behind the counter and started, like, played with the rod, picked it up, and was like, "Whoa." It's like, he's like, "I don't know." And he helped me build a line. "Yeah, how long do you think you can cast this thing?" And I was like, "I don't know. I normally use an 11-foot line."
Right. Right.
I'm gonna need a little bit more than 11 feet. And he built like a tapered line for me that was like 30 feet, and then a leader that was like way more than I needed. We started out at like 50-pound tests and tapered it down to like,
Yeah.
20-pound tests. It was ridiculous now when I think about it. But I went out with this line and he was like, "Good luck." And I showed up at the marina the next morning, and this guy was like totally like, Florida Keys guy, right?
Right.
Bleach blonde,
Tan.
and wrinkled face,
Right.
and so I told him, I'm like, "I want to catch a bonefish, but I want to do it on this." And he looked at it and was just sort of like, "It's your money, lady. We'll spend the day doing whatever you want." It's like your dollar. So we went
Use a
out.
hand line. Fine. I don't
Yeah,
care.
it's like,
Right.
okay, you know.
There goes my tip.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. Gonna be drinking rum after today, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But we went out and we actually did not get into, he was looking for like a school of bones for me, and I was casting terribly, and it was, ugh, when I
Right.
think about it, it was like he was extremely patient. Um I had never cast a line that long, but I was figuring it out. Like I said, it wasn't pretty, but I was getting it done. And we finally we're not getting into any bones, but he ended up chumming water and bringing shark in. And I ended up catching about a couple of sharks that were between 3 and 4 feet, a hammerhead and a bonnethead shark. And then I started to get cocky and say like, "Oh, this is nothing, right? No big deal. I need something bigger." And he was going to take me to a channel, an area. He's like, "Okay, you want bigger, bitch? We'll get you bigger, right?" And so he's like, "I know a channel and there'll be bigger sharks in there." And I was like, "Okay, cool, let's do it." Like feeling like I got this. On the way to the channel, we spotted some rolling tarpon, and that was sort of ended up being the highlight because, I cast in and got my first tarpon, and it was mayhem. But it was a smaller tarpon, probably I don't know about 3 feet long,
Still counts.
32 inches,
Yeah.
36 inches, right in there. And because it was a group and they were actively feeding, we were able to get the boat in a little closer, kind of sneak up. And, I had all this, pounded tests on. So, we were able to grab the line and haul the fish in. But it was exciting and I got it. And so now I'm really feeling cocky.
Right? Oh boy.
So we went to this channel and he chummed the water, and within a few minutes we had 8-10 foot lemon sharks coming in and all of this crazy massive stuff, and I was stupid enough to cast.
Oh boy.
I'm on this flats boat, one step and you're in the water now with these frenzied shark. And, I cast and the fly hit the water in front of this big, lemon shark. He immediately took it and popped my rod in half, and my line and my tip and everything went in the water and sunk in this clear water in this channel. And I said, "Okay, I guess we're done." That's it. Not gonna
Day
retrieve
over.
that. Game over. Thanks.
Oh gosh.
But that was it. It was a challenge. It was somebody who literally said, "Go do this and then come back and talk to me." And as clueless as I was, I didn't exactly land a bonefish, but that set me on.
Tarpon. Wow. Yeah. Did you go back to the fly shop?
I didn't, and I regret that.
Right.
To this day, that
Right,
I
yeah.
didn't get his name or anything, that I just
Just wanted to show you this. Yeah.
yeah. It was
Right
pretty
on.
cool.
That's phenomenal. That's great. And I think that's, if we didn't have that kind of gumption to go do something like that, we'd still be stuck, way back chucking for small fish and doing all those kinds of things. That whole idea of the challenge and opening the door to so much more, leading to the development of 10 weight, 12 weight, whatever Tenkara rods with longer lines to go actually fish saltwater stuff. You're a pioneer in that, and that deserves kudos. That's amazing stuff. And we are definitely grateful for people like you in the fishing industry. And I know there are probably some staunch people who believe what that fly shop owner believed, but we're not one of them. I think that's amazing stuff that you're doing that. And the fact that also, let's be honest, that you're a woman doing those pioneering things, I think is really, really special and really, really cool. For fly fishing. So kudos to you. That's awesome. That's amazing story and love that. Yeah.
Well, I think it's taught, this whole process has taught me at the end of the day, just to not fear failure.
Right.
Because regardless, something good always comes out of it. Something you've learned, some little nugget, some experience, something you've learned about yourself. And, every fish that I've landed on my Tenkara rod has taught me something about how to manage a fish on my rod and reel. How to keep that tarpon out of the mangrove, how to turn that permit away from, the reef, how to do different things. And I've also just been able to travel and meet incredible people and just,
Right.
just see the world, through that avenue of fly fishing has been incredible.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Well, this has been an awesome conversation, and we're going to definitely have you on because I don't even think we talked about half of the things that we wanted to talk to you about with getting out into doing your DIY trips with the Tenkara rod and stuff like that. So we're definitely going to have you back. Tenkara is something that Reed and I are actively exploring, and can't wait to use your products and use them this summer as we do our trips. So we're going to get our hands on those. But how about we wrap this up for now with the GFW hot seat and go from there?
Okay.
Welcome to the GFW hot seat, where the name of the game is to answer the questions. And the prizes are... Wait, who said we have prizes?
All right.
So good.
First question. What is one thing you're currently celebrating in life?
I think I'm celebrating just being where I'm at. I've gone through a number of careers. I'm certainly no spring chicken. And it's just been very cool. I would never have imagined that all of, those side road trips would have brought me to where I'm at right now. And so just really celebrating, holy schmoly, wow. How the heck did I get here? And how cool is that?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Good stuff. What's one piece of content, book, video, TV series, whatever, that you'd recommend to our listeners?
I'm a pretty avid reader, and I read a varied genres. But I got my hands on I think it's Dave Coggins, The Optimist. Which is just, I'm usually not one for reading fly fishing books, but I just really enjoyed his humor, and just the way he looks and talks about fly fishing really made me laugh at myself because I was like, oh my God, I so I found the humor, in it just to be really refreshing and also very humbling. Oh yeah, I'm that crazy person that
Right.
has all this organized in the back of my truck and all of this stuff. So that's a great read.
Good.
The Optimist and The Believer, I think, are the two. So I really enjoy those books.
We agree. What is one of your favorite fishing memories?
Oh, well, I have so many of them. But probably my favorite is the Matchbox, with my father. You kind of can't beat that one.
Right.
So catching my Matchbox cement truck with my dad,
Nice.
is probably my earliest fishing memory, and certainly most special
Right.
one.
That's a goodie.
It's a goodie.
What's one piece of advice you wish someone had given your 20-year-old self?
Ooh, I envy those 20-year-olds now, especially the 20-year-old women who have opportunities that I never even could have imagined. I remember at one point, probably in my late teens or early 20s, I had this dream. I wanted to live on a sailboat and travel the world and write for National Geographic.
Nice.
That was a dream.
Right.
But I had it just seemed so far-fetched, and I just was like, I don't even know where to start with that one, right? And so it just kind of became like a joke. So I feel like I'm not really doing that now, but I kind of am doing that now, right? In a way, through fly fishing and then writing and talking about where I've been and where I've traveled and where I fished. So I would say, surround yourself by people that share your interest. You don't have to be good at it. You don't have to know much about it. But if it's a dream, if it's a passion, I would have told my 20-year-old self, go find these people and don't worry about it. Just get yourself in there, and eventually you'll make connections, you'll create relationships, opportunities will present themselves. And before you know it, that dream starts to become reality.
Word. That's great. Good stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
What is your definition of community?
I think it's community, I think is those people that share your passion. They support you, they mentor you, they're there for you to offer advice, and you're there to do the same for them in this shared passion. They're not getting anything from it other than, sharing that passion. So to me, community are those people that, that surround you, that are there for you, that share your interests and your passion, and, and will help support that.
Right. Love it. Love it. What's one thing you've changed your mind about lately?
Gherkin pickles.
Gherkin pickles.
Oh, dear.
Okay.
I hated them. I'm liking them now.
Nice. All right. Excellent. Love it.
It's like, why didn't I like these? These are okay. It's like, I had one by accident in a Bloody Mary. I hated gherkin pickles. I bit into it and I was like, wait a minute. This is not a dill pickle or a half sour pickle, right? It's like, this is a gherkin and it's not bad.
Nice. Good. Like it. Expanding your horizons with
I have to
gherkin
admit, I've
pickles.
never had a gherkin pickle. Don't even know what it is. Is it like a...
It's like a sweet tart. I don't know
Yeah.
how you know.
What's it compared to like bread and butter pickle?
Probably similar, a bread and butter, and I think a bread and butter might be a little bit sweeter, and a
Sweeter,
gherkin
okay.
might be a little bit.
I probably like gherkin pickles.
Yeah,
I like pickles, so
I don't know. I'm a half sour girl coming from South Florida and delis, right?
Yep.
Well, our last segment is what we call the conversation between guests. And so we have a question from our previous guest, who was Boyd Waters from Fly Fish Studios. And his question to you, and I'm kind of going to read because it's a little bit of a longer statement. You said, I recently read that fish actually might dream. They share the same sleep patterns as we do, and they put off the same wave patterns like humans. And so my question is, what would be the exact moment when a fish decides to take your fly? And is it a rational decision or just a primal decision? And after they do that, do they dream about it?
Or have nightmares.
Or have nightmares?
Right.
Right.
Um, I come from the philosophy that it's never black and white. It's never a this or that. It's always a combination of both. So I'm certain it is a prime response at a certain level, but right? You also have those fish that look at your fly and contemplate it, or they come up and then change their mind, or they even bump it, right? And slap it with their tail, but they don't put it in their mouth because, right? There's something in the back of that little fishy mind.
Dumb fish.
That's saying, wait a minute, I had a nightmare about this.
Right.
I'm not going to put it in my mouth again. So I think, I mean, I think it is a combination of both. I mean, it's
and so you're on team they do dream.
I read that article.
Oh, you did?
And I mean, whether it's meaningful dreaming or just like short circuiting, like, some extra electricity that's got to go somewhere, that's a whole nother discussion, right? Consciousness, right?
Right.
But sure, why not? Fish dream. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Reed's dad used to analyze his dreams, so we could probably do the same for fish dreams too.
Yeah. Growing up in the house of a psychotherapist. Boy, oh boy.
Wow.
So what is your question for our next guest?
Well, it's something I've been pondering myself. And kind of it pulls me in both directions as somebody who's part of the industry, right? And has a Tenkara manufacturing company, blind company, right? As somebody in the industry, as a business owner, you're always trying to grow your business, right? But at heart, I'm an angler and a conservationist, right? And I know that we have this finite resource that is being pressured more and more every day through, development and climate issues and water shortages and changes and all of those things. So how do we ethically grow a business within a finite resource or a finite arena? We want more anglers every year to be on the water, but our really can only sustain
so many,
so much pressure.
Yeah.
So that's something I kind of wrestle with.
Good philosophical conundrum to bring to the conscious level. I like that. That's good. Good question. Deep question.
It's a hard question.
It is a hard question.
Yeah, it keeps me up at night.
Right.
It is.
No obvious
Our
answers.
next guest is doomed to answer that one. So.
I want to know. I want to know the answer to that.
Yes,
poor person's going to start crying.
At least sweat a bunch.
A lot of ums and uhs coming.
That's right.
I could change my question.
No. That's a good one. That's a good
goodie.
one. Yes, it is. Karen, this has been a phenomenal conversation. How can our listeners learn about you, get in touch with you? Where can they find you? What's the best way?
Well, the most direct way is our website, zentenkara.com, ZenTenkara.com. Kara.com. There is a contact us on the menu, and you can reach out with all kinds of questions. You can also contact me directly, Karin, Karin, at zenflyfishinggear.com. We also are on Facebook, Instagram. We have a good resource of videos on our YouTube channel, Zen Tenkara / Zen Fly Fishing Gear. We are on Pinterest. We are on TikTok. And really, the blog that we have on our website has some really wonderful and informative articles.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great. My wife's name is also Karin. And you know the whole negative connotation with the name Karin. Have you experienced that too?
I have, but I say, well, I'm a Karin.
She's a Caryn. Yeah.
That sets us apart.
You're in
Totally
the
takes
clear.
us out of the game.
That's right. That's right. That's funny.
We're
That's
the
great.
good. We're the good Karens.
You are
Yeah.
absolutely 100%.
There's going to be a lot of Karens changing their spelling just to get themselves out of the...
Good witch, bad witch, right? We're the
That's
good
right.
witch.
You are for sure. That's awesome. Thank you so much for being with us. This was fantastic. And we got to have you back because there's so much more I want to ask. Either that or we just go fishing.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm good.
Both.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me too. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care. Bye.
All right. Since my dad is listening to this, I'm calling him out for not doing the old pickup truck on the fly line trick for me. I guess I didn't deserve that excitement.
You didn't get that. Yeah. What a great story.
Seriously.
Yeah. One that she still has the little truck up on her shelf. That's so good. That's so good.
So good.
It's what it's all about, dude. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I think I appreciate most about Karin was her authenticity. Her willingness to be kind of a pioneer in, a predominantly male-dominated sport of fly fishing where it can be tough, there's that piece to it. But her pioneering with, bringing Tenkara fishing and her love of that and what she found in that, and just to be her authentic self and all of that is something to behold, man. It's inspirational. It's awesome.
Yeah. Her watch me attitude is pretty awesome with that story about going and designing a tapered line just like on the way with no idea what she was doing. I can only imagine that I would have sat down for hours, like researching and like, what do I need to do and stuff. Not a chance I would have gone and like, hey, random guy, help me build a fly line for this.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Your analytic brain would have been like planning it out for months. No, I think it's just, yeah, she's a badass, dude, getting poked by some dude in a fly shop and being like, yeah, let's go. All right, fine. Game on. Challenge accepted. Let's go.
100%.
Yeah, that's cool. That was a great conversation.
Well, and her gear is awesome too. I know we checked it out at the Denver Fly Fishing Show. It was awesome. Super high quality. Can't wait to buy one of those from her and use the ever living crap out of it. So I'm pretty pumped for it.
Just makes us have to go on another trip.
It does. It does.
Do some different kind of fishing. All right.
Yep.
I'm in.
Yep. So
yeah. Good, dude. Yeah, that was a goodie.
It was. What are you celebrating this week?
I am celebrating being back out on the water. My 6 weeks recovery knee surgery jail sentence ended, and day one I went out onto the water. And so it was great to be back out after a 6-week hiatus. And the knee felt good. It was just a win all the way around for my psyche, for the cabin fever, we got some springtime weather. It's supposed to be like in the 80s this weekend. So, so that's a big celebration, just getting back into it because I have missed it dearly.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Are you having any pain at all anymore? That I know you had trouble just like bending it.
Yeah, not like pain. There's, it gets tired, but it feels good. So I'm excited for it. Yeah, I'm excited for that just to keep working and developing. I think it's going to be good. So,
Nice.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
Well, you're headed out here in a few weeks, so
Yes, indeed.
good to hear that you're on the up and up.
I'm ready, dude. And at least I will be. How about you, dude? What are you celebrating?
I am celebrating my my Grammy. She recently passed away. We knew it was coming for a long time, and I had to travel and pause some things in life for going and getting to spend some of her last minutes with her, and then also headed back down there for funeral services, and it was just awesome. Not that funerals are awesome, but it was great to have all the family together and all that, reconnection with people that you haven't seen in years. There are people there's a lot of people I didn't know, but just people from my super, super youth that I had no idea who they were but then it was like, oh, that person was that person. Oh, that's interesting. Like, right. And just like reconnecting the dots on old stories. So it was really, really cool, and just grateful for those last moments with my Grammy, and know she's off to bigger pastures. So
right on, dude. Well, even though I didn't go, you read me your speech and absolutely crushed, and you moved some people to tears, dude.
That was not the goal. I was going for the laughs, but I guess I slipped in some sadness in there too.
Right? Yeah, you got some chuckles too, but no, dude, you hit a home run with that one. That was awesome, and that's that's not an easy thing to do, and so
no.
Kudos to you,
I will say
for doing that.
It was not easy, but at the same time, I encourage anybody who has even an inkling to say something. I know I've passed up opportunities in the past to do it out of emotion, and I think that is a wrong choice. If you ever feel like you are even close to saying something, you should do it. I think it's important, and yeah, it was a good experience overall.
Right on, man. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. What are you navigating?
I'm navigating in, I don't know, you and I have talked about it, this cultural unrest that is like swarming us at the moment. It's hard to not get emotional about some stuff that's going on in our world. And yeah, and I think it's just, when coming from the person who's tried to teach my students and tried to teach my kids the idea of humaneness and treating each other kindly and nicely, and those kinds of things are at the core of what we do, and trying to be empathetic and keep other people in mind as we make decisions. And that's a difficult task. It seems way more difficult right now. It does. And, I say that with a chuckle because I feel like that's all I got. I just to have to like laugh at it, just so I'm navigating that and trying to help, my own kids through it, and what it means and what it looks like, and the unknowns of what might happen and what might not happen. And, I just feel like there's this, so yeah, we've talked about it at length.
Well, I'll just start with my my navigation as well. Is just the punchline is anxiety, but I haven't really had anxiety since I stopped working. I used to get it around big projects when I was making giant decisions. But
right.
it's I thought I had figured out ways to manage it, and it just is like sort of slowly creeped back up on me, with just everything going on in the world, just every different thing that everybody knows what's going on. And so, just just trying to navigate, trying to get back into some of those strategies to get some of those anxious feelings to subside. I think the biggest thing I've learned in dealing with this in the past is trying to avoid the statement of I am anxious and really acknowledge that they're just feelings and they're not actually me. And so that's what I am kind of hanging my hat on in a lot of ways. But I have found myself feeling a little more anxious lately, and I don't love the feeling. So I'm navigating that whole world. So
it brings up all kinds of questions to decisions I've made recently, and I'm just like, oh God, should I have retired? Like maybe I should go back to, I don't know. So yeah, all kinds of stuff. I got you, brother.
For sure.
Well, good. I think it's important to lean on the people in your life, like you that talk through this stuff and help out and make you see things and different perspectives and ways to think about it. And I love that idea of, reaching into your toolbox and getting back to some of those strategies to help manage it because it's real. It's there. And it seems like it's in my face right now. So I appreciate you, brother. I really do.
You as well, man. And yeah, everybody go out and be a little kinder to one another, because I know we're all humming at a little bit higher frequency right now. And I even see it in my world, just me. I snap a little bit faster than I normally do, or right. So I just gotta give everybody a little grace out there right now.
Absolutely. It's good advice, bro. Well, another great episode, man. 50th. Good work.
50th. Yep.
I love it. This is 50th. Fun, man. Yeah.
On to the next 50, buddy.
Absolutely.
Love you, man.
I love you too, bro.
See you.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to visit our website, guysfishingweekend.com, to check out the GFW merch, sign up for our newsletter, and learn how to get involved with the community. We appreciate you spending even a little bit of your week with us and are glad to have you along on the journey. Stay legendary and happy fishing.